Is my screen too dark? Welcome to
Rock the Crown. I'm Daia.
And I'm Naima, and we're your hosts for today's show.
Today, our topic will be religion and spirituality, and we have our special guest, Fatima Khokhar, who will be joining us. Assalamu alaikum, Fatima.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your presence here on Rock the Crown. So today's topic was selected mainly because in today's time, we have a lot of everyone is a little concerned about the current crisis that's going on, and you wouldn't believe how many people, when things like this arise, start to Google and search, who is God, what is religion, what is spirituality. And so, we find that, with a lot of people now being curious about these things, we think it's a good time for us to discuss it, to talk about, religion, to talk about spirituality, and to discuss, what, if any, is the difference in those two terms. So the term religion and then the term spirituality. So that would be my first question that I would like to pose to you today, Sister Fatima, is can you explain the difference between religion and spirituality?
Okay, it's a jam-packed question right there. Assalamu alaikum again. I'm happy to be here with you all today, alhamdulillah. Let me just begin by saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. So I like that you said the difference between religion and spirituality, if any, because one thing that I love about Islam is that it really is a connected practice of religion and spirituality. And I should say a spiritual experience through religion. And so when we think of the word as Muslims, religion, oftentimes the word deen will come to our minds, right? And we call our way of life Deen al-Islam, right? And when we look at the term deen in a dictionary, for instance, you would see that it comes from a root that means debt, right? And so this idea that when we say Deen al-Islam, Islam being submission, right? This willful submission to the will of God. And so if we look at it together, this idea of this debt of submission, right? And that as creation, a part of creation, we are living this way of life as we repay the debt of Allah and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of the blessings, the mercies, the blessings and mercies that he gives us in our life, right? And when you look up the term spirituality, there's so much difference in Islam about that term in the sense that, in the dictionary, you'll find ruhaniya, right? Or it's related to the soul, the spirit, right? That's that more literal term. And so taking care of the spirit. You also, as Muslims, we think of the term tasawwuf, right? And so this purification and this emptying. And so on one hand, you'll kind of look at it and say, okay, well, deen maybe is more of the outward things that I do, and maybe the tasawwuf, the spirituality, is more of the inward state of how I'm doing them. What is my internal state when I'm doing them? When I think of religion, I think of, and actually I can pull it up, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "This day I have perfected your religion for you, completed my favor upon you, and have chosen for you Islam as your religion, as the way you repay your debt, as the way you live your life, your obligations, right? And that's found in Surah 5, Surah Ma'idah, right? And then when we think of that inward state, that spirituality, there's so many things that come to mind, but there was one that I wanted to share. Oh, that's not it. Sorry. Where is it? Uh-oh. That those whose hearts tremble with awe whenever God is mentioned, who are always patient with whatever ill befalls them, who always establish the prayer. And the ayah goes on, but it starts with الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم, that they tremble in awe, like this inward state of wanting to be with Allah, wanting to feel that presence of Allah. Even when you hear the name or the mention of your Lord, right? You have this internal experience, right? So hopefully that made sense. But that's just a little bit of what comes to my mind when you say religion and spirituality. And again, how linked they are for us as Muslims. Because Allah says in a hadith Qudsi, and this is where it's the message from Allah, but the words, the Prophet is explaining it in his own words, right? And he tells us that Allah says that there is nothing more that my servant comes closest to me through by their obligatory acts, right? What I have commanded of them, they do that. And then they can increase that with extra, right? Until I become until I love them, right? And when I love them, and Allah goes on about how he's the sight with which they see, and the hand with which they strike, and the feet with which they walk. And this, but it starts first with this submission, this obedience. And in the hadith of Jibril, we have where the angel Jibril comes to the Prophet as a man, and he sits with him and he asks him, tell me, what is Islam, right? And he gives these outward actions that we participate in as Muslims. It's to make the shahadas, to testify openly with witnesses, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, to make the prayer, and he lists all 5 prayers. But then he doesn't get up and walk away and say, okay, that's it, good, all right. He asks him about the next level. What is Iman, right? And so he asked him about what is faith, right? So now he talked about this kind of, again, those external actions, and then he asked about the internal state of the heart, right? And to believe in Allah. And this is where we kind of get our, start extracting some of our 7 articles of faith, right? We believe in Allah, we believe in the angels, and all of these things that you cannot see now, right? So we went from those very obvious things that you do to now these very subtle things that we cannot, I cannot prove to you, right? That Allah and the angels and the messenger, you haven't seen them, I haven't seen them, I'm believing in them. I'm making a choice to believe that what I'm practicing is deeper than just some actions, right? And then he's asked, and what is ihsan? And so now as Muslims, we're directed towards, wait a minute, there's another level, right? And he talks about worshiping Allah as if you see him, knowing that you don't see him, right? And so this now, even this higher state where if you are in this state where you're constantly with Allah, like Allah is with me, he sees me, right? Now everything is going to transform on another level. And from that word, we get excellence, beauty, and again, something that we're looking to have in our character and definitely in our spirit, to exude this beauty, this nur, this light that Allah gives to those who, seek him religiously and spiritually. I'll stop there.
Okay, and so there was something that you mentioned that I'd like to go into for the second question. So we're talking about the inward and the outward. And of course, during this time right now, Muslims are fasting. And, you often hear that they often hear it being stated that fasting is for God. And that really he's the only one that knows if you're fasting or not, because he is. Like, no one physically like, they may see you for a little bit of time, but they don't know if you ate chips before you came over or, whatever. So truly fasting is between you and your Lord. So we know that that is something that is inward. So regarding spirituality, what are some spiritual techniques that we could kind of, do and focus on right now that can keep us in line with not only just about spiritual, but keep us in line with where we are in terms of our religion, or even just keeping us in line centered with the Creator?
Alhamdulillah. So something that's so beautiful, all of our religious practices as Muslims, they have levels, right? And it's by your spirituality that you attain the depths of these levels, right? And when I say spirituality, again, we're talking about that intimacy, right? That we're building with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that ihsan, right? Now I'm aware of Allah all the time, right? I want to be in the presence of Allah all the time, right? And so with fasting, one of the unexpected, amazing aspects of, this COVID experience where we're all kind of home is that the access, mashallah, like Muslims, just in general, people are being so generous in what they're sharing right now. And so many of us who don't have time to listen to lectures, actually read more Quran, stay up for the night prayers, just be able to be more silent and still and reflect meditatively, to focus on those names of God. He has revealed himself to us in 99 names, right? To call upon him. And each one are a sign of a name to reflect. How am I exuding Ar-Rahman, right? We're in the 10 days of mercy. And so, when we talk about deepening our practices with spirituality, I think of the term muraqaba, where you become more aware of accounting for yourself. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? How am I doing it, right? And so becoming more aware of the heart. And often when I talk to young girls, I use the term heart awareness, right? Just really becoming aware of the whys behind what I do, right? And that could be from why I like to talk about this subject, or why I like to eat this food, to why I pray. Why do I make salat, right? And so there's no kind of realm that's hands off from that type of reflection and introspection to become more aware. I remember when I was, and this might be getting off the topic a little bit, but I'll bring it back. When I was in school, taking Montessori training, and after the first week or so, one of the young women asked me, she said, I noticed you wear a lot of black. Is that like for religious reasons? I'm just kind of curious. And I laughed and I said, well, I look good in black. So I tend to wear it a lot, and they just laughed. And it kind of opened up a conversation about dress. And I just told them, I said, well, I have a really simple formula. I just, when I get up and I'm ready to get dressed, I say, can I dye in this? And they just kind of looked at me like, whoa, that went morbid. Wait a minute. And I said, no, for me, I just think, can I meet my Lord in this? If I can meet my Lord, stand before him, knowing that I strove to be in compliance, right, with what you have put in my heart, that this is what I'm okay with, I'm good with you with this, that's what I mean, then, that's what I wear for the day, and I'm at peace. And they were like, oh, okay. You know, the older women were kind of like, wow. And the younger ones were like, okay, I don't know. I can't think about death like that. But for us as Muslims, you know, death is not something that we're I don't want to say that we don't have any fear, or, you know, that is something, a natural human feeling, but something that we are not afraid to confront and know that it's a reality. And so we are thinking about, what am I putting forth, right? And so when I'm engaging in my religious acts, first, Allah said, that's what you come close to him with first. So when I am making my salat, how am I making sure that my heart is connecting in my salat? Where is my spiritual benefit from this meditation Allah gave me 5 times a day? And so some of those things that we can do as we're all working on polishing our hearts, connecting our hearts more, is, you know, you might meditate a few minutes before you make salat. Don't just call they come and get started. Take a moment, sit down. Maybe read a few passages of Quran, maybe your favorite passages. Maybe listen to a lecture. You know, salat is coming up. You want to get your heart in that space, you know, pull up Rock the Crowd, you know, listen to last week's episode, you know, there's just so much. Study al-Islam has lectures every morning, right? Sapelo Square every morning. And those are just a few, there's so many. You might sit in silence. Try to quiet your mind before you make salat, right? You might reflect on a name of Allah. Maybe you choose one a day, you know? And so Ar-Rahman, the overwhelmingly merciful benefactor, you just contemplate some of the benefits that you've received since you woke up that morning. And then you stand for salat and taste a different sweetness of your worship. Because again, our worship is not for Allah that he needs it. We do it out of obedience to Allah, and in turn, we get a benefit, right? Now and in the hereafter, inshallah.
Is it? Inshallah. I really love what you, especially, you know, my passion is really working with young people also. And so to bring young people into the conversation, a lot of the young people that I have a regular relationship with, they are, you know, kind of on that, on the fence. You know, a few of them maybe have one parent who's Muslim, you know, and one parent who's not Muslim. You know, one young girl, she grew up with her grandparents who are non-Muslim, and the grandmother is very heavily in the church. And so, you know, a lot of times when I'm with her, you know, and I take her to the masjid, so she grew up around both Muslims and Christians. And so what I always just try to impress on her is focus on your relationship with Allah. Focus on your relationship with your creator. And I think that is how I kind of summarize spirituality. It's like, if, you know, God forbid that, you know, we were never introduced to Islam, you know, let's say that we were never, you know, Christians were never introduced to Christianity. We were never introduced to the organized religion as it is today. You know, what would we be doing? You know, how would we connect to our creator? And so I think back to some of the things that Rasulullah, you know, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, used to do before, you know, he received the revelation. You know, he would retreat to the cave, you know, he would retreat and go to himself. And so that brings to mind for me meditation, you know, being off to myself, just to myself, you know, just taking time to really sort through my feelings, sort through my heart, you know, really, really, really try to connect, you know, with myself. And I think also, you know, the cave also is, you know, it resembles nature. So for me, I love being outside. You know, when I'm indoors, I feel so cooped up, you know, but when I step outside and I'm around grass and, you know, trees and flowers, all those things really, really remind me of Allah. And one of my favorite places to go, and Naima's favorite as well, is the beach. Because whenever I go to the ocean, yes, the ocean and it's the way it's just so massive, that right there for me, it is just a huge reminder of Allah and how, vast, and how rich and just, just how glorious, he is. And so I think that those are some practices, spiritual practices that a lot of people do who may not be Muslim, may not be Christian, but they meditate, they go off to themselves, they go and be in nature. Traveling also is another great way to really connect, I feel, to connect with Allah, also to connect with humanity, because you're going around, you're meeting different people, you're learning about different cultures and different histories. So I think that, that spirituality really, really ties our souls to one another and ties our souls to nature, and then which originally, goes back to the original source, which is the creator. So those are some of the things that really sparked me, in your words that you mentioned. Another thing that you said was how, you try to do what will bring you peace, peace, and another word for that might be contentment. So I wanted to know that the next question that we want to ask would be like, how can we try to develop
has honored me, I should be the most grateful in calling upon my Lord and asking for his forgiveness. And when I say forgiveness, in that idea of Toba, or repentance, right, is this idea of turning back, recalibrating, right? And so when I sit and I am asking Allah for repentance, I'm really, a part of that is not even that I may be thinking of a particular thing, but that I'm knowing that Allah, by his mercy, gives me every moment to turn back. I'm not stuck where I was yesterday, last week, this morning. I'm not stuck there. Allah wants us to call back, right? And know that my sincerity, my sincere turning to him gives me a new moment. And so that's one thing that comes to mind. And then, knowing that, reflecting on all that Allah has given us, right? I asked my children, we were talking about, they had to come up with some synonyms for mercy. And we were talking about how Allah is the merciful benefactor, right? And that just by being created, doesn't matter who you are, if you are the best of the best or the worst of the worst, you still experience God's mercy, right? And so they're kind of looking at me, and I said, well, did you ask Allah to make your heart beat today? Did you tell your eyes to blink? Again, and they were like, oh, okay, and so sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed, like you said, retreat, retreat and start to reflect on the good in your life, and knowing that it is there, and that many of our hardships are to teach us something, for there still to be a benefit, and searching for that benefit, knowing and trusting that Allah wants good for me. Allah wants good for me, right? And sometimes we start to feel like, well, especially as women, well, I know Allah wants good for my husband and, for my children and, but what about me, right? And knowing that Allah wants good for all of his creation, everyone, and that includes you, right? And trusting that will help you find the good, will help you find the benefit, will help you find, that's why I needed that. right? And the other thing is, I remember when my children, they were getting involved with the children's climate change movement, and alhamdulillah, a very good movement. And I said, well, I just want to clarify, let's just clarify some things, that, you know, our job is not to save the earth, right? Because that's a really big burden to carry. I must save the earth, and, you know, I'm never going to run out of worrying about that because it's a really big task. I said, but so that's not what Allah is asking of you. The creator, sustainer of all the worlds has allotted a time, and it will run its course, just like everything will, right? Only Allah exists forever, right? And so, our job is to show gratefulness. Grateful. The more grateful you are, the more contentment you will have in your life. And you will show that, right? When you're grateful for the water, you won't waste it. You won't take it away from someone else to get more for your town, right? You won't leave lead in the water knowing that it's harming people, right? You won't do that, right? Because you are grateful for the benefit of it, and you want that to be for everyone, right? You won't recycle because you're trying to save the earth. You will recycle because you want to make sure that whatever you take, it's not wasted, right? And just that small paradigm, I'm not trying to save what Allah didn't ask me to save. He's asked me to save my soul, right? And so coming from a place of gratefulness, even, you know, why is a smile charity? You know, it's a sign of, I have something to smile about. I can find something to smile about. And even if I can't, I'm going to smile, and it will help me get to that, which is going to help me, you know, connect back to something good, subhanAllah. So gratefulness would be my short answer, to tap into being more grateful. And even if that means stopping and sitting down, taking some time to reflect on it, or doing something that brings you joy, and knowing too that there is a purpose for what occurs, right? We don't know why COVID-19 is here right now, why I'm stuck in the house virtual teaching as a teacher, you know, you know, subhanAllah. But we are. And so, like we were saying earlier, tap into some of the things that are happening. We may not have been doing this Rock the Crown series online like this if we were getting together, right? So all the blessings that are coming can help us, you know, kind of calm down a little, and continue to find and look for the good. It's like Mr. Rogers said, that what his mother told him, right? When all the things would go on bad and they'd show it on the news, and his mother would tell him to look for, I think it was the helpers, right? Those who were there to help. That's who you focus in on. Not the chaos of whatever happened that was bad, but look at all those who came to help. And subhanAllah, we've seen so much of that in this time. So many people, I'm getting a little teary-eyed, but so much sadaqah is being given. So much thought for others is being shown. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for that. We so appreciate it. And of course, we, you know, I think that, you know, as you get older, gratitude becomes more important. And that you can kind of see it in a way that you couldn't see it when you were younger. One of my sons is working right now, and he had kind of, you know, spent months. He has his own business, but he had spent months like, oh man, I need to get a job. I need to get a job. And now he's working, you know, and we're fasting now. And he's just like, man, I got to get up, go to work. I don't want to do it. I'm just like, don't lose the blessing because you just got it, you know? So it's like, you know, we can kind of see it a little bit different, you know, the older we get, but alhamdulillah, gratitude is always something that we should always continue to focus on. I think that also helps to get to contentment. And the last question we want to ask today is just because I think that sometimes people are turned off by religion. And it's oftentimes because people are putting religion in a category of where instead of a measurement of where people are individually, people begin to measure as a whole. And so you oftentimes see people judging each other. And so, somebody could put something on a post or something, or even just be talking to people and say, oh, you know what, I'm going to, oh, we're starting fasting today. Oh, but and then it goes into this whole, they didn't see the moon and all this. And then it just becomes like a judge fest, right? And I think that oftentimes we get taken away from religion and spirituality because of judging one another. And so how can people maintain religion and or spirituality without judging? Hopefully that makes sense.
It makes sense. It's uh, so, well, two things. One is, it's really hard to stop yourself from judging, right? And so there's kind of two levels of it. Like, you might judge in your mind, like, that was crazy, or, oh, mashallah, that's really inspiring, right? Both of those were judgments. I just judged something that I thought was crazy, and I just judged something that I felt was really inspirational. Now it's my choice what comes out of my mouth, right? So now I can say, oh, no, that was crazy, and did y'all see that? Let me tag so-and-so and so-and-so, and then I start this whole thread of something that I judge. I don't know that person's state. I don't know anything. I could care less about their benefit. I just thought it was crazy. And now I need everyone to go and hear this or see this or whatever and make their own comments, right? And sometimes we watch something and then we're like, ooh, let me check the comments. What, what are the judgments? Now it's one thing when, that's why you put it out there. You want to generate, what are your judgments? Let's share it. Let's talk about it. And something else where, that's not what was asked, right? And so, being really aware, again, going back to that heart, right? That because I see something on the outside that someone does, how am I going to internalize that, right? Or do I need to internalize that at all? Right? And so this feeding of that nafs, right? It could be my ego, or so often it's my ego, right? That I want people to know that I know what is right? So let me make sure that everybody knows that that's wrong, but whatever it is. And so again, knowing that, I think, Daya, you had said it, that knowing your relationship with Allah, knowing your state, right? If I witness that Allah is true, Allah is one, right? When we make that shahada a religious action, right? I bear witness that Allah is one and Muhammad is his messenger, right? Or then automatically my behavior has to start trying to get in line with that, right? That I'm going to try now to focus in on that, my relationship, right? And so sometimes when we feel ourselves wanting to judge or this and that, it's like you can stop yourself as easy and say, well, what about me? Is everything I'm doing right? And just kind of reminding yourself, like, and we have that tradition in many religions where you're asked to make excuses for someone else. Why? Because it keeps the heart soft. When you start to judge and, let yourself be consumed by what other people are doing, your heart goes away from its own self-care, right? And Allah wants us to be in our own self-care, right? And so that's first and foremost, I would say, just bringing the mirror back on yourself and keeping it there instead of trying to reflect it, and people will be able to take their good from you, or, on their own, and not because you were forcing it on them or anything like that. And, just that humility that we are all trying to be in this state of spiritual awareness, heart connection, that intimacy. When you hear the word intimacy with Allah, this idea of being filled with divine light, Can you imagine that? And then you're judging others, and you're talking about people, and you're pointing other people towards other people's faults and things like that. Like when you even say it, divine light, it can't be in there, and so, fasting is a tool for judging less. Our desires are being lowered just by the act of fasting, of withholding food. It dulls some of those other things that we hunger for, right? And it heightens some of those other spiritual, those inward senses where I can really, with my intention of, I'm doing this. I was teaching my students earlier today, the fasting dua that you say. And we were on the leka part, for your sake, that, oh Allah, I shall fast tomorrow for your sake, that leka, for you, one and alone. And so really staying in touch with that, my religion is not for other people. It's for Allah, right? My spirituality, if it's about, becoming a guru and, now I can tell you these things, this and that, on either way, religiously or spiritually, and it's not for Allah, for your direct connection, for your direct submission to your creator, then, it can easily turn into something that turns back and it's all about me, which means you might benefit somewhat by it, in this life, but definitely not in the next, right? And it will run out in this life, right? If it's just, the focus is just on doing it, for yourself. And even when I say that, for yourself, Imam Muhammad, he was asked about this question, between spirituality and religion. And part of his answer was that Allah created man with an affinity or an appetite for divine will. There's a part of us that want to know we're getting it right, that I know I'm doing what is pleasing to my creator. And when we say pleasing, we mean it's going to align us with that intimacy, that connection with our source, with peace, with contentment. Allah is the peace, right? All these sources of good are what connect us to our source, right? And so that is I say all that to say it's such a personal and intimate relationship that you don't have time to be judging other people's relationship. And if you see someone and you feel that judgment, start, because it's natural, right? Some of that is going to be until you really start working on it, right? Then you make dua for them. You pray for them. And I promise you will soften your heart so much. You will find you have those excuses for that person. Not because you're saying it's okay, but because you want good for them. You want them to, be on their journey in the best way with Allah. Just like, you keep bringing it back, just like I want that, just like I want that, right? So, inshallah, during these, special days of Ramadan as Muslims, in this time, just like our Christian brothers and sisters just went through Lent, we're giving up to purify. We're giving up to heighten our spiritual senses. And so that could be a goal, I'm going to be more aware of how quickly I judge, what I say when I'm judging, how I react when I'm judging. What can I do to become more aware of that? And how do I want to change it? Right? Or not. You may not know exactly how to change in the beginning, but you would say, this is who I want to be. I want to be somebody that when I see something crazy, I'm not going to show no face. I'm not going to make a comment, and knowing the difference. Like I said, some people are inviting that conversation. They want that interaction. They're looking for good advice versus when you're starting to, attack, which we see that struggle on social media is real.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Fatima. I feel like we did like a full circle, like a full tawaf. Like we started off with like religion, and we got into the spirituality, and then we went all the way through like really what happens kind of like in the soul. Like, you know, that there's it starts in the mind, you believe it, it's in the heart, and then physically we go into it. But then we know that there's challenges. And so, you know, it was important for me that we talk about judging, because this is something that, you know, it's happening a lot. And especially during the crisis that we're going through right now, we just want to make sure that we're being soft and gentle with one another and with ourselves, you know, because now that we are being so, we have more time to be introspective. And so when you start looking inside of yourself, don't beat yourself up so much, don't judge yourself so much that, oh, I'm not this kind of person. But there's opportunity, there's space for you to grow, there's space for you. And because Allah is merciful, if He's showing yourself mercy, let's also show ourselves mercy. And then just making sure that when we come out of this situation, that we are better people. And if you don't come out a better person, even still knowing that there are still opportunities for you to always do more and to be better. So alhamdulillah. Thank you so much again, Fatima. And I'm so excited because we haven't had Daia on the show in a while. So we're so excited that Daia was able to join us again. This is our 14th episode. We actually have one more episode left to finish season 1. So we just want to thank so much everyone that has been supporting us in the Crown Nation, as we would like to call them, the Crown Nation crowd, as well as, those who just kind of stumbled across us. We are so, so grateful. And because we are going through this dynamic time, is what I'd like to call it. It's a dynamic time because if you see it positive, there will be some great positive things that come out will come out of this ahead. And so we want to thank everybody. Hopefully everybody will watch our last and final show of the season next Sunday. And with that being said, we want to make sure that everyone is liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, and subscribing to us on YouTube, and following us on Instagram, because sorry, we don't have Twitter, but we do have Instagram. So I want to correct that. But alhamdulillah, thank you so much again. This was our 14th episode of Rock the Crown, and hopefully we will see you all again soon. Peace. Thank you so much. Love you, ladies. Peace out.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.